It's kind of evolved a little bit over the last 20, 30 years since we've been doing this. Originally, the skeptical movement, scientific skepticism, was about promoting science and debunking pseudoscience
Right.
and promoting scientific literacy. And that's what we thought was like, that's what we needed to do in order to, reduce the amount of pseudoscience in the world. But then, over the last 20, 30 years, partly because of experience, partly because of just the movement maturing, partly because of research done by psychologists and, people who study this sort of thing, it became pretty obvious that scientific literacy by itself doesn't really accomplish much. And you need to combine it with critical thinking skills. What's critical thinking skills? It's kind of a broad umbrella, but it's knowledge of logic, philosophy, neuroscience, how our brains work, how we deceive ourselves, what I call neuropsychological humility, the ability to understand the weaknesses in our own ability to perceive and process information and the limits of our own thinking and logic, cognitive biases, that sort of thing. And then the third piece is that we realize that, this also, although again, you might file this under critical thinking, but it is worthy of its own category, and that is media savvy, right? Media literacy. You need to understand how to consume the media, how to tell a reliable source from an unreliable source, the kinds of processes that occur within journalism or different kinds of media that might bias the narrative in one direction or another. You put these three things together. Maybe, who knows? In 10 years, we'll add something else to the list. But these, I think, capture everything that we do: promoting scientific literacy, promoting critical thinking skills, promoting media literacy as a sort of a combined skill set, so that we can tell what's more likely to be true versus less likely to be true. There's no absolute certitude out there, but we just want to know. We want to have a reasonable, realistic assessment of how likely something is to be true. People don't necessarily do that, or they believe a lot of things which are almost certainly wrong, while they might not believe things which are almost certainly true. So clearly they're following a flawed method, and we're just
Yeah.
trying to figure out what that is and correct it.
And look, what you just explained couldn't be more relevant and needed in our world today. As I speak to you, literally as I speak to you, so this will, the people who are watching this the next day will know when we've done this. We have a protest. This is Lisa's a live feed of stuff.co.nz, which is where my podcast is platformed, of protests going on in our capital right now around, well, they say it's around mandates, but as you can see here, the big sign in the middle of the thing is talking about the vaccine. So it's really an in my opinion, an anti-vaxxer march, kind of hidden in amongst civil liberties. That's because when you look at the crew, every single one of them is unmasked. It's just a mass spreader event. So I think what you're talking about, I spoke to at the kind of the start of the whole pandemic, I spoke to an academic out of the UK, Dr. Steven Novella, who talked about the research he had through when people don't believe climate change and how it relates to what we were going through then, and the idea of, I guess, scientific literacy and understanding what to believe and what to trust and why seems just so more relevant today than ever before, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's always been relevant. I think every generation thinks that theirs is the one that's having the big crisis, but I think we could say things have gotten objectively more challenging with social media, with the mass media. There are, I think we're also probably coming out of, like, if you go back to the 70s into the 80s, what some people have called like a golden age of journalism. And so it may seem that way only because we're regressing to the mean, but I think to some extent it's always this way. There's always pseudoscience, there's always fraud, there's always cranks, there's always ideology, tribalism, sectarian views, etc. And this is not anything that's ever going to stop, as far as we can tell. It's just part of the human condition. And so that's why, again, like, they think the most important thing is just to give people a skill set that they could use to navigate an increasingly complicated world with increasingly complicated narratives and claims. Part of that is increasing scientific knowledge, the world's just a lot more complicated than it used to be, and it's just harder and harder to navigate all of that.